Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with scientists, writers, artists, educators, social scientists, government leaders. We speak to each one to one. Out of the tsunami that redefined us on that awful day, September 11, 2001, arose a new generation of people determined to help, to rebuild and mend the scarred, both physically or psychologically. Hundreds of organizations and thousands of volunteers were eager and needed to band together. A few remain active today, and one of them is Tuesday's Children. And I'm pleased to welcome its executive director, Terry Sears.
Thank you, Sheryl.
Tell us how and why Tuesday's Children got started.
Well, after September 11th, there was a lot of people that came from all over the world to help the victims of September 11th. And there were many programs put in place, including some government programs, FEMA-funded programs where there were people that were there manning phones to help the families. What families tell us is that when they call the 1-800 number to access help, that they got somebody reading from a script, somebody who was asking what their case number was, and they really felt it didn't have the personal nature that was needed for them to kind of feel supported. This was something that no one predicted, no one expected, and they themselves felt in such a level of shock and disbelief that they really needed someone to talk to, not someone reading from a script. So a group of family members who'd gone to the many different services all over the tri-state area, you'd go to each service, and in the front pew there was undoubtedly a young mother with 3 or 4 kids in the front pew. And it became apparent from service to service that who was going to stand in for these families and who was going to stand up for these children. So during one of the services, someone was giving a eulogy and began repeating just over and over again, who is going to stand up for the thousands of children who have lost a parent on this day? And the congregation began standing up one by one by one, and next thing you know, the whole church or synagogue, I'm not sure which one it was on their feet. And later on, after the service, when people just felt that was such a beautiful expression of support for the 9/11 families that they had to really now get to work and try to figure out how they were going to do this. So a group of brothers, family members of 9/11 victims and friends came together and started an organization called Tuesday's Children.
Now, did you have a personal connection, a personal loss on 9/11?
I did not lose a relative on September 11th, but I live in a town called Manhasset. There were 38 families directly impacted on that day.
Now, is that because there are a lot of firefighters who live there, or what?
Well, I think it's mostly because it's very commutable to Wall Street.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, you can take a train and within a half an hour be in Penn Station and a short subway ride down to Wall Street. So many people live in and work in the Wall Street area in downtown. We also have towns around Manhasset where there's a lot of firefighter families as well, you know, Garden City, Hempstead, Rockville Center, and the like. But I think with Manhasset, it was mostly Wall Street families.
Okay. What was your background before you started with this?
Yeah, I've always been involved in the nonprofit sector. I've been on the board of my children's schools. I'm on the board of a number of foundations and have worked in nonprofit in my 20s. I was home raising 4 children, and when September 11th happened, I just had this overwhelming sense of guilt of bringing 4 children into the world and trying to sort of make sense of the world that they live in. I know that I wanted to help just like so many Americans, so many New Yorkers, and giving money to the Red Cross didn't feel like enough. I knew a number of family members in our town that were struggling. They were struggling to get back on their feet, struggling to make sense of what had happened to them, as well as, you know, be there for their children. So when I heard of Tuesday's Children, and I read about their platform of programs, which was all very personal, sort of from mentoring to parenting to wellness, the idea of getting the mom or the dad that was left, their surviving spouse, back on their feet really felt compelling. It felt like something that you were going to be able to really impact a family in a very, very fundamental way. So I went to their first fundraiser and met some of the founders and asked if I could be involved. And next thing you know, I was chairman of the board, and even that felt like I want to be there every day with these families.
So who qualifies to participate in, to receive the services of Tuesday's Children?
Yeah, initially it was if you had lost an immediate family member. That was, a mother and father who had lost a child, a spouse who had lost, their husband or wife, or a child who had lost a parent. Our mission has grown over time. We now do many programs for the 9/11 responder community, as well as an international program where we bring children together from all over the world that have lost an immediate family member owing to a terrorist act, and that's called Project Common Bond.
And we're going to talk about that. But before that, how many children are there in New York who would qualify?
Well, in the greater New York area, there's over 3,000 children that lost a parent.
Who lost a parent.
Yes. Some say it's as high as 5,000. It's sort of depending on how you define family. And we reach out to anybody that throughout Boston to Washington, the greater New York area, or really from around the country as family has moved away, to take part in our programs and services.
Now, obviously, I mean, as you suggested, what you do has evolved. The kinds of things you do has evolved over time. What were some of the original? Tell me about some of the original services and programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Originally, the thought was that we had to deal with the surviving adults, the surviving spouses. We needed to make a relationship with these
So it was the spouses that you first.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, initially we brought a lot of these family members to a lot of different events, sporting events, to hockey games, to just stuff to kind of get them out of their house, to get them, achieve some normalcy in their life and bring them into the kids in a place where they could have fun again. And we knew that we had to establish a relationship with these families, and these events allowed that, whether or not it be a beach party down on the Jersey Shore or something up in Westchester, Build-A-Bear for the kids. We established a really close relationship with these families, and we were able to then offer them really life-changing programs. Our first program was called Creative Insight. Over 350 of our moms, and they weren't all moms, some of them were dads as well, that we were able to bring them into this program where we overlaid on the support groups that sprung up all over the tri-state area a life management program to teach them real skills, to have them be able to view their life differently. So basically, there were skills they would learn like have no expectations in life. This has happened to you, it's completely unexpected, but you need to move forward taking one day at a time without expectations. These were things that literally got some of our family members out of bed. And it was a program that allowed us to really have credibility with the 9/11 family because they established relationships with each other, and they really, felt that we gave them something they couldn't find anywhere else. It was a very unique program. It's a Stanford University Business School program.
Oh, really?
Yes. A Professor Michael Ray had really grown this program out in California, and it's a program that is done in conjunction with a life coach. So there's a sort of therapeutic aspect as well. And that program we ran, I would say 25 programs throughout 2004, 2005, and 2006, all through the tri-state area. And it really was an amazingly successful program.
The focus being, how do you move on?
How do you move on? But also, who makes you who you are? How does 9/11 have its place in your life, and how we can put it in its place and move forward in a positive way. And Tuesday's Children, I think the sort of mantra and focus of Tuesday's Children has always been about moving forward. It's never been about keeping people focused on September 11th or kids focused on September 11th. Really more about, okay, this happened to you. What can you do to move forward?
So the initial focus was on the remaining spouses, the surviving spouses.
Yes.
And then where'd you go from there?
Well, we had a platform on programs in place, which we actually still do. It's the same vision that we had in the beginning. You start with the youngest kids. At that time, there were 110 children born after September 11th. So there were kids that really, weren't on our radar screen yet. But we knew that the average age of the child was 8 at the time of September 11th, and we needed to fill in for that parent lost. So we established a mentoring program where we take screen-trained adult volunteers to come together with the kids twice a month for a couple hours each time they get together and do things from maybe their homework with them to just go to their baseball game and be there to support them. That program has been running at capacity for the last 6 or 7 years. We always have a waiting list to get into it. And even now, we have 9/11 family members not only signing up for Tuesday's Children, but signing up for things like a mentoring program.
Now, I have spent a lot of years as a big sister in the Big Sisters, Big Brothers program of New York, which also serves children in need and is a mentoring kind of thing. How is your program different from that one?
Well, there are similarities. We've used, consultants from Big Brothers and Big Sisters to help us, formulate the program, as well as the National Mentoring Partnership. When you're a new nonprofit, you've got to bring the experts in to give you sort of the guidance that you need. The program is different than This Is About Loss. I mean, the elements are the same, and this is about being there for a child to minimize what could become at-risk behaviors, or mitigate depression, anxiety, be there as another sounding board for this child. We know that when we survey our family members, as we do every 3 years, to find out where they are and how they're doing, we've participated in longitudinal studies with clinicians and mental health experts. We want to see how these families progress over time, that when we survey the adults, that people are getting better, and that's the good news, that really is. But when family members talk about their kids, they can also say that the kids are doing better. But we know that a lot of the children don't want to confide in their mom that, things are still bothering them. Children grieve very differently than adults. They grieve throughout time. They don't do it in this one static moment that happens over a year or two and then they can move on. As they grow and as they come into the knowledge of their loss and the knowledge of the magnitude of what happened on September 11th, the world event that it was, and how that they're intimately connected to this, they really need more understanding. So they may only do this at 14, 15, and 16 years old. We also know that there's a lot of anger in some of these kids as they become to understand, the senselessness of what happened and the anger and the hate that happened to their dad, and the fact that they, will never get to know this person that, their memory of as being, so present and so big and so there for them in their life as a child. So we need an understanding or an organization there that understands the complicated sort of grief that comes with an act of September 11th. As a matter of fact, there is something called complicated grief that we're only beginning to understand, where people can't move on because of reasons, that could be 9/11 is in the paper every day,
right?
Well,
we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more with Terry Sears, Executive Director of Tuesday's Children, after the following message.
When you smoke around kids, you expose them to thousands of chemicals that are eating them alive. Cigarette smoke contains poisons like cyanide and carbon monoxide that trigger severe health problems, like painful ear infections, crippling asthma, and deadly pneumonia. Cigarette smoke is linked to low birth weight and doubles the risk of sudden infant death syndrome. Cigarettes are eating you and your kids alive. Quit smoking today. For help, call 311.
Cuando fumas alrededor de los niños, les expones a miles de químicos, como cianuro y monóxido de carbono, que causan graves problemas de salud, como dolorosas infecciones de oído, asma asfixiante y pulmonía mortal. El humo del cigarrillo está asociado con nacimientos de bajo peso y duplica el riesgo del síndrome de muerte infantil súbita. Los cigarrillos están acabando con tu vida y la de tus niños. Deja de fumar hoy mismo.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Terry Sears, Executive Director of Tuesday's Children. We talked about the mentoring component of the program, but you were talking about, this whole array of emotional and psychological issues that develop as a result of 9/11, which sounds like the kind of thing that you need a psychotherapist to deal with. I mean, do you have that kind of counseling component to your program?
Well, we ourselves are not counselors at Tuesday's Children, but we do have partners that we either do referrals or programs through. For the programs that we have for the 9/11 responders, we have psychologists and people that are graduate students for degrees in psychology, as well as an array of mental health experts that we can put the 9/11 responders in touch with for their different needs, mental health needs.
And do you have special programs for teenagers?
We do. We have at this juncture a lot of giving back programs. I mean, the experts tell us that helping heals. So the end stage of grief is really being able to give back to someone else. And it sort of makes sense of the loss in a sort of a variety of different ways. If you're able to reach out to somebody else who has suffered either similarly or in a way in which that you can help them, that it puts your loss into perspective. So we take kids down to Katrina to rebuild a house. We've taken them down to South Carolina to help flood victims. We've taken them down to Costa Rica to help rebuild a school. And our international program really has that component about it as well. When we bring kids together from Israel, from Palestine, from Ireland and Northern Ireland, and
This is a Project Common Bond.
Yeah, Project Common Bond. The program is where it's half the 9/11 children and half children from all over the world
Who have been victimized by terrorist attacks. That's
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the idea is for the 9/11 teens who really conceived this idea. They said they want to reach out to others who have suffered this similar loss, and that the bond, will be the common bond of loss. And I'll tell you, we've run the program for 3 years. We do it in partnership with Harvard University Law School.
This is Common Bond?
Yes.
Okay.
And the kids get together, and the bond is instant and profound between the kids when they come together to meet each other on the first day of the week-long program. And it really doesn't matter where the kids are from and what they've been through. We've had kids from Spain, the Madrid bombings, the London bombings, from Ireland and Northern Ireland, from Palestine and Israel, from Liberia. This year was the first year we've had children from two sides of the same conflict. So there were kids that were in direct opposition with each other.
Where are they from? Was that
Ireland and Northern Ireland and Palestine and Israel.
Okay.
And the program has been amazingly successful. The 3 goals of the program are to heal, create community, and to also make these kids become leaders, give them skills to sort of do something with their loss. The Harvard professors that are the part of the core dialogue of the program, which every day the kids get together, all 70 of them will get in a room and learn skills about what makes who you are, and what makes you different from these other people in the room, and explore ways that they can work together as a group of people, as innocent victims that have been impacted from acts, really terrible things. So
and you said you observed some interesting evolution among the Palestinian students who went to Belfast this last summer.
Yes, I think that many of these kids have not been out of their country. Many of the kids have never met anyone else impacted. And there can be sort of, an insularity about people living in their own country just thinking they're the only ones that have suffered such a thing. And when they realize that this is global, and when they realize that they meet someone they really like, that really cares about them, that there is an uplifting element here and a real potential for these kids to do a lot of wonderful things. And some of the kids have decided, the children are between the ages of 15 through 20 that come to Project Common Bond. Some of them have rethought, their life focus. I'm going to get into conflict resolution. I'm going to get into peace building. I'm going to get into global studies so that they can really focus their energies in a way in which they can have impact.
Where does the financial support for your program come from?
Yes. Initially, Tuesday's Children was funded by a lot of disaster relief 9/11 money from organizations such as Robin Hood, the American Red Cross, many of the large Wall Street firms. And we still have a lot of support from corporations and foundations. However, as an organization that was sort of shot out of a cannon, if you will, a grassroots organization that became very successful, there were 410 9/11 organizations. There's only a handful left, and we're the only organization serving the broad-based needs of the 9/11 families and responders and the children. Our funding now is much more based on individual funding. That allows for sustainability. The nonprofit consultants will tell you that you need 80% individual funding and about 20% corporations and foundations, because those are the people that renew the gifts.
You mean when you say individual funding, just personal individuals sending?
Individuals
Okay.
that say, this is my focus, this is my charitable focus, and I'm going to support Tuesday's Children. So they renew their gifts. They tend to repeat their funding year after year, where you could get funding for a corporation for a couple years, and they may decide they're going to avert their focus, and it's gone. So
how have the needs of your clients and therefore the needs of your program changed?
Well, I think initially, you might have a phone call from a 9/11 family member, and you'd be on the phone for 45 minutes just trying to just listen and just hear the depths of their despair and their not knowing how they were ever going to be able to pick up the pieces. I mean, the good news is many of those family members are now helping Tuesday's Children reach out to others. We had a number of 9/11 spouses on our trip to Belfast, Northern Ireland this year. And a lot of them are helping us reach out to the 9/11 responders whose needs we know continue to grow and continue to evolve. Unfortunately, those people, they're getting sicker and their needs are growing. So
the responders are going to be an area where you...
Absolutely. Half of our funding for the 2010 and 2011 year is directed to the 9/11 responders.
Okay. And what can you do for the responders? I mean, I know there are things like, I'm familiar with the program at Mount Sinai.
Yes.
That tries to address the medical needs of responders. What kinds of things can you offer to the responders who are... I assume there would be a number of problems. I mean, the psychological and emotional impact, but also people who are getting sick and sicker.
Yes. We offer complementary programs to the Mount Sinai's and to the centers of excellence around the tri-state area. Programs such as wellness programs, career guidance. Many of these men and women can no longer work in the area in which they were employed, so they need help in finding a new way to seek an employment. They're young, they're vital, they want to be working, but they feel like a bit of a ticking time bomb. When am I going to get sick? I know that I was down there for 6 to 9 months and breathing in the same stuff that the other guys are sick from. How can I look at my life in a positive way? So some of them want, relationship management. We hear from their spouses or significant others that the guy that left me on September 11th to go down there and came back 9 months later is not the man that I know now. I mean, it could be something like substance abuse, or it could be just depression, anxiety, PTSD. Let's face it, these people saw things we never thought we'd have to see.
Now, every year on September 11th, there is a huge ceremony, a public ceremony commemorating what happened then. And you have the public officials who come out, you have the uniformed firefighters and police who come out, and you have the reading of the names of the people who perished, which goes on for a couple of hours. I guess some people think that that's helpful. Some people think it's, maudlin. Do you find this constantly remembering and commemorating, is that a helpful thing to the people in your program, or does it prevent them from moving on?
I think for some it's very helpful. I would say Tuesday's Children has always sort of stepped back a bit around the anniversary of 9/11. We really like to think of ourselves as being there for these families and kids when no one else is looking and when everyone's attention has gone back to their lives. I would say that Tuesday's Children has always been about looking forward. We're not about memorializing, as much as that is very important and healthy for many family members to do so. So there is a subset of Tuesday's Children that really finds that service on September 11th very therapeutic for them, and that's fine. Everyone has a different way of recovering.
There will come a time when the children who lost people on 9/11 are no longer children. They will have become adults. Do you envisage that Tuesday Children will no longer be needed, or will it serve a different purpose?
We think it'll serve a different purpose. I mean, no nonprofit survives without a permanent mission, and our permanent mission is both Project Common Bond, that is helping children from around the globe, and we know from this past year's program that adults from around the globe also want to seek the same service. They're sort of envious of the service that their children have gotten from Project Common Bond. They're envious of being able to come together with people from around the world to share their loss. So we believe Project Common Bond will continue to grow. We also know that Tuesday's Children is a wonderful resource for what works in the event of a disaster such as September 11th. And God forbid that anything else happens. And as we know from the warnings that came out on yesterday morning, you know, this is the world we're living in. And we need to be prepared. And we need to see what an organization that has been successful with the victims, what they can offer, and so that we can be ready to roll out similar programs in the event of another disaster.
As you know, there's been this huge controversy about whether to build or not build a mosque or a Muslim community center near Ground Zero. Has that been something that your organization has gotten involved in at all?
No, we tend to shy away from issues that could be controversial and that all 9/11 family members don't feel the same way on.
Right.
The only thing we're there for, if there is an issue in the news, be it the 9/11 trials or the mosque down at Ground Zero, that we are there to respond to whatever thing that may bring up for family members. So we stayed away from that. We know we had many 9/11 family members that are for the mosque and many that felt insensitive, you know. We don't take a stand on that at all.
Interesting program. This gave me a chance to learn about it for the first time, and I'm sure it will for a lot of other people.
Great.
And I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing and also evolving as the needs change.
Yeah.
We're out of time. I want to thank Terry Sears, Executive Director of Tuesday's Children. And if you'd like to learn more about the organization and how you can help, check out tuesdayschildren.org. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.